Hello, welcome to The Finish Line. I'm your host, Dean Cavaretta. This is a public affairs show produced in Beverly, Mass., shown in Acton and throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Today we have two very special guests, Jim Avallon of Beverly and Barbara Anderson of Marblehead. Welcome to The Finish Line. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Dean.
Nice to be here.
We thought it would be good to have two local activists that have been involved on many campaigns and ballot questions and issues throughout the years to come in and talk about the 2014 elections, talk about what it means to get involved on campaigns and the public process. We're living through incredible times right now. If you think about the issues, health care, taxes, immigration, gone are the days when we're talking about very small things, and it's very important to talk to the communities about ways to get involved, why it's important to get involved. So we thought it would be a good idea to have people that have worked on campaigns, that have worked for candidates and issues, to come in and talk about the process so we can all maybe encourage others to get involved. So Barbara, I think we have to start with you. Your career.
I'm the oldest.
Well, you're the most effective. So
and I'm the girl.
And you're the girl.
Get to go first.
But we know, when I think of your work, I always ask myself going forward, what will be the next Proposition 2.5 issue? What can be an issue that can unite the coalitions together to work for a better tax policy where the people have impacts over their property tax rates and budgets going forward? Because I think back to 1980, and I was alive during that process, and you were able to unite many types of people around the issue. Why do you think that was so?
Why was 1980 different from 2014?
Well, insofar as, you know, here was an issue that impacted a lot of people.
No, I understood what you said. I was simply repeating it as I tried to think what was similar about anything now that's going on. It's a different world. It's a different universe, different paradigm. And I joined Citizens for Limited Taxation in 1978. And some of the people who are members of Citizens for Limited Taxation still are. And when we get together, we just shake our heads and say, it was so intense back then. You know, we had opponents and we were in the fight of our lives, and now you look at what you have to do now, and it was so easy. It was just because our opponents were the same. You know, the center-right coalition has the same opponents it always has, the public employee unions, particularly the teachers union, the League of Women Voters, big business, everybody who doesn't like small, limited government. So that was the same. But the difference, here's the difference, and I think Jim will agree with this, it's the public that you're talking to.
Right.
Back then, when we did Proposition 2.5, the whole world was paying attention because we had a lot of talk radio. Cable television was just starting out.
Right.
But we had only a few stations. Everyone was watching them. Everyone was listening to talk radio. And so almost everyone knew what was going on. And they could focus on Proposition 2.5, the big issue of the year, because there really wasn't a whole lot else going on.
Right.
Now everyone is so scattered, it's so diffuse, you've got to get the attention of people who are doing a million different things, listening to a million different devices.
How to capture people's attention to get them to listen to your issue, your candidate, your point of view. Jim, you've been in the trenches as an activist in Beverly throughout the North Shore. Actually, you go to events all over the place. How is it best to get people's attention?
Well, I think I've been very involved with Richard Tassay's campaign recently, which didn't turn out so good. But in any case, I think going door to door, door knocking, approaching people personally gets people involved.
Right.
I really think it's important. He emphasized that incredibly.
It cuts through the fog.
And you really do get a sense of what's going on out there after a while. Not immediately, but if you do it long enough, little by little, you get the same responses, the same this, the same that, and you actually you can get an idea of what the positives and negatives of the campaign are.
Right. In your experience going door to door in 2014, what was something you now know that you might not have realized before or learned new about the body politic?
Going door to door.
You have a certain amount of time to get people's interest?
Yeah, you have to be pretty quick when you go there and approach people. You got to be very subtle. I think a lot of people are so busy today that it's hard to get their attention. And
speaking of getting people's attention, the fiscal issues, Barbara, has been at the cornerstone of CLT's mission.
But everything's a fiscal mission. That's the problem. Everything has to do with, almost everything's funded by taxpayers.
Right. Now, on the CLT website, clt.org website, is every tax cut is a pay raise. How did you come about with that quote? And talk to me a little bit about why you wanted to frame the issue that way.
Actually, Chip Ford and I, there's three of us, the Citizens for Limited Taxation, Chip Ford, Chip Faulkner, and I. We were walking across a parking lot, and we saw a bumper sticker on a car that said every tax increase is a pay cut.
Right.
And we liked the bumper sticker, so then it was just a matter of finding one and having them made. Somebody else thought of it. It wasn't, I'm saying, an original idea here. But it's a concept that the reason it struck us is it's so obvious, and yet nobody thinks about it. And when you hear it for the first time, everyone does this little jolt.
Right.
That's right. Every tax increase is a pay cut for me. Think about that, unions.
Right.
And every tax cut, of course, is a pay increase. So if you see it in that term, that makes it personal, not just a big general economics issue.
Right. Speaking of economics, Jim, we've talked a lot about business issues. You work for a leading company here on the North Shore. What are you seeing out there as an engineer, as a small business practitioner on the North Shore, about competition, about the future of your company, about what people care about? The business of America is business, a former president once said. I think it was Calvin Coolidge. What are you seeing out there?
Well, I'm in the research end of things, but
you keep your ear pretty close to the ground.
It's difficult to get the right type of people.
Okay.
The skilled people, I think, and I see my company get a lot of foreign engineers and things like that, and I wonder about that. So I think that's kind of a problem for us.
Now, businesses are competing globally now. They're dealing in real time. They want the best labor available at the time, and they'll go to whatever lengths they need to go to get that. So you're saying in your company's situation, many times that can be from foreign labor.
Yeah.
But does this mean something's wrong with our educational system, that we have to go to China to find someone who can fill a job in your business? Is that a defect of the United States educational system?
It could be this. It could be a situation where we might have to start talking to more business leaders and have them work with the curriculum.
Yeah, I don't know really what the core problem is, but I see that in our business, and of course a lot of our products are made in China, and that kind of disturbs me, and that's difficult to see. I mean, I wish we were opening plants up in this country.
Right. Now, one of the things we've talked about off air, Barbara, is both Charlie Baker and Mark Fisher, in my view, did a very good job of talking about the future of vocational education. It was one of the things they actually agreed about. What's your opinion on that? We've talked about that. Is it, obviously learning the trades, having that be a viable option for students, but also reforming vocational education to update it to the skills that your company needs, like laser technology. What were some of the others we talked about? It was manufacturing, working with machinery.
Machinery, yeah. High for technician work. You have to understand programming and operating high-level equipment.
Now, both Mr. Baker and Fisher talked about linking vocational high school education with the community schools, with the small business community. So they're all on the same page, basically what you talked about. What's your view of vocational education?
Oh, I am huge on vocational education. Our town is part of the whole local.
Marblehead's part of a regional.
Yeah, the Essex County Regional Vocational School, I think is what it's technically called. I think they might have just changed the name, but I think it's wonderful. The kids are encouraged. There are people who, when they're young, like 8 or 9, they know what they want to be when they grow up. They want to be a plumber or an electrician, and that's discouraged in our educational system. Everyone's talking college, and now that college puts these kids in debt, $60,000, $80,000 when they graduate. That is insane.
Right.
When you could go to a vocational school, learn a trade. My son went through college at a time when it was cheap, really. But the skill he has used in his life was he had to paint his way through college to raise tuition money.
Right.
And he still does the painting and paints their house and painted their new offices and things.
Right.
So he learned a skill somewhere along the way. But some people, they study, I don't know what they're studying for $60,000, $80,000 when they graduate, but then they don't have jobs and apparently aren't even qualified for Jim's more technical, high-level jobs, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. I think we need more technical people that are qualified, and not everybody has to go to college to learn that.
Supply is not equaling demand when it comes to this. I know Governor-elect Baker has talked about a 3-year degree program as a small start in changing how we look at school to work. Certainly those types of programs should be encouraged. Let's talk about the tech tax that didn't go anywhere. That is something that would have impacted the North Shore tremendously because of the 128 corridor. Barbara, when you look back at that ill-fated effort in 2013 to add a sales tax on computer services and technical services, what's the lesson there? I mean, besides the obvious of reading the bills, what's the lesson there that can be drawn from that proposal by the Democrats in the state legislature?
That the business community should be paying more attention to what's going on in Beacon Hill, the technology industry. Back when we did Proposition 2.5, speaking of 1980, our major ally was the High Technology Council. And these people were not business school graduates who were running companies. These were the engineers who had created the product in the garage.
Sure.
And so they thought differently than a business graduate would. They thought in terms of revolution. So they were out there fighting to limit the property taxes, which was discouraging engineers from wanting to come and live in Massachusetts, which is probably something else you run into, Jim. Who wants to live here?
Right, the cost of living.
Yeah.
Well, they live in New Hampshire.
Right,
Yeah.
and
They
the taxes
commute down here.
and the abuse on Beacon Hill, and you're embarrassed to say you're from here. So the High Tech Council wanted to encourage people to come here, so they got involved with us. I don't know what they do now, but they certainly missed this.
Yeah.
Nobody saw that coming, and the first time I saw it, I said, they can't do that. But then I thought, my second thought was, hey, the business community doesn't care, why do I care? I'm not an expert on business taxes. So they fell down on their faces, but boy, when they recovered, they put a stop to it.
Right, it goes to show you what can happen when citizens get vocal. Barbara, you write a column for the Salem Evening News, and it's picked up in other papers as well, the Lawrence Eagle Tribune and others. Looking back at your columns, and I'm asking you to generalize here, but generally speaking, what columns seem to generate the most interest from your readers? Is it depends on what the issue of the day? Does it depend on fiscal issues?
Well, since I write a weekly column, I can't just do tax issues all the time, so I get to do other things. And what I'm focusing on is women readers, because the problem we all have is the woman voter. We all know that now, what Charlie Baker had to go through to prove he was a good, compassionate guy, so women vote. I mean, this whole thing embarrasses me, but as one of those women things.
Sure.
But nevertheless, you have to do it. So I write hoping that women will want to read about my grandchildren and my garden and things. And then while I'm there in the middle of the column, I throw in, oh, by the way, you are going to vote for Richard Tassay, right? And Charlie Baker.
Right.
I do a lot of that. And I find that men enjoy it too, that I try to give the personal reason to do what we do.
Right.
Which isn't just to save taxpayers' money. It's to make
There's a
the
reason
system
behind
work.
it. Right. There's a reason behind it. Now, Jim, you're a very avid reader of the Wall Street Journal and public policy and tax issues. What's your impression on 2014? We've all worked on campaigns that were successful, and we worked on campaigns that fell short. Anything stick out for you as to
on the national level or the local?
It could be national or local. I know we both followed both.
Well, I think it was a major saying no to the president, that we don't like his policies.
Right.
We don't like the way he's running the country. That was evident. I mean, the number of legislatures that the opposing party took is incredible. State legislatures. They don't talk about that too much. Nationwide.
Yeah.
And governors. And it was a major no. We want something different. And I don't know why he doesn't realize that.
Right. Well, that gets us back to the state of the Democratic Party. I think it's fascinating to see the changes not only on the center-right side, but also on the left. The fact that Don Berwick could get, I think, over 20-something% of the vote as a progressive candidate, first-time candidate for governor. That suggests a big following amongst the far left, doesn't it?
Well, there's always been the far left, and there's always been the far right, and then there's all of us normal people who make the decisions, and I think that's probably a good thing, because if you are going to have a far left, and you've got to have a far right to get balance, but you're going to come out in the middle, not in the middle as a compromise, but in the middle as this is what makes sense,
right?
And this is what we can actually make work.
That's a good point, Barbara. Do you think the far left and the far right just got a head start or got a little bit better at issues advocacy from their point of view? How to organize, how to communicate their point of view, or why have they been successful?
Well, again, it's hard to do without defining far left and far right. For me, I'm a libertarian, so I'm nowhere. I mean, there's the 5 or 6 of us, and the world is never going to be the way I want it to be.
Right.
So I have to compromise just from the beginning from what the world that I would like to see and what is possible, and I'm perfectly happy to do that, because what is possible has got to be a whole lot better than what is.
Right.
So the far right to me is the religious right, which should be completely disregarded by all of us, and the far left are the nutcase communists and socialists,
who don't want capitalism.
We don't want. And but in the middle, there's a lot of range, and a lot of us try to get along. That's why we have this center-right coalition.
Right. Now, thinking of that coalition, do you think it's the idea of organizing around issues? We had Dan Fishman here a couple weeks ago. He talked about libertarianism through the prism of liberty. The idea that if you can bring every issue back to more freedom or less freedom, you can get many people in the center-right coalition that may not agree on every other issue. What are your views on that?
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think liberty is an important word. And I think that's one of the things I like about libertarians. And
maybe framing the issue in those terms and not so much what divides, but the fact that is this issue or proposal enhancing freedom or restricting freedom? Barbara, what do you think of that?
To me, it's all about freedom. But other people have an interest in this thing called security and take care of me. And so the new code word, I think, has been efficiency. I think that's one reason that Charlie Baker won, is he didn't get into ideology at all. It was, let's make the state work.
Yeah. And
since the state was so obviously, and is so obviously, not working, that, I think, was the winning strategy for him. Do you agree, Jim? I think.
Definitely. He was very practical, Charlie Baker. He talked to the people. He talked to the issues. He didn't get into ideology.
And you notice the Baker
like
and Polito campaign did a very good
job. Into a party, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They did a very good job early on, and they kept up the pace of always having proposals and press releases. This is what Charlie's going to do on X, Y, and Z issue. And it seems to me that Coakley never offered up those specifics that the voters may have wanted.
Because she, like so many others on Beacon Hill, didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's very hard to put out. It's not, I think, that she was trying to deceive as to what she really intended to do. I think she doesn't know what to do. I don't think they know what to do. I think most people don't know what to do. The thing that is unique about Charlie Baker is he knows what to do, and he's on his way to doing it. And his first cabinet choices have been splendid.
Right.
And I'm excited to just watch and see how this is going to work out. And I think the Democrats are also a little desperate for someone to tell them how to run a state. So I think they're going to cooperate as they did with Bill Weld back when Bill took over at a bad time.
Right.
Charlie knew what to do in 2010, although it didn't work out. He had his Baker's Dozen, 13 points. I remember reading it. I was very impressed on the issues and got right to the details, into the weeds.
I think the other thing that they've done very well is they've been very sensitive to local governments and the idea that if a local government can be run well, why can't the state aspire to the same thing? It's the same group of taxpayers, right? They deserve. Well,
until we get into all the unfunded pension liabilities, and then how well the cities and towns are being run is going to become another new issue.
Yeah.
But I think Jim just made an interesting point, too, that Charlie Baker was just as good in 2010. So you mentioned Prop 2.5 earlier. Everything's a matter of timing. It really is. We won with Prop 2.5 in 1980. I don't think we could have won in 78 or in 82. But 80 was the perfect year. Ronald Reagan was on the ballot. We'd had years of Jimmy Carter. Taxpayers were angry. It was time to do something. And that's where we are this year, where we just weren't for Charlie in 2010. People weren't yet desperate enough for a competent human being.
Right.
This year they were, and so a lot of it isn't the fault of anybody. It's just the way you run a campaign. It's just, is the timing right for you and your kind of candidacy?
Right, that's very interesting. You know, we've talked about liberty. The idea, Barbara, don't you think that people generally wanted to believe in the idea that me as a property tax owner or a citizen should have an impact on setting my own tax rate? That it shouldn't be delegated to a state legislature or some kind of local board.
Yeah, interestingly, the thing about Prop 2.5 that people really like is the concept of the override. That if they want more money than Prop 2.5 allows, they have to ask us, where before it was just keep taking it. So I think people like to feel empowered, and anybody who can make people feel empowered, whatever their issue is, instead of just, we're going to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
I think that those people will be successful in politics and activism.
Sounds to me like we get some good unifying words here tonight. We have efficiency, empowerment, liberty. I think that freedom. Those types of themes can galvanize people from different political spectrums. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the future Baker administration forming now, Barbara. You know the legislature very well. You know the different groups that are up there. It's going to be very interesting to see the governor-elect work different issues and try to build a governing coalition, won't it not? He's got to deal with different parts of the state that have different competing interests, and he also has to cobble together votes on both sides. That's going to be very interesting to watch.
Well, it is, and one great advantage that I have over Jim is I'm older, a lot older, and therefore I've been through this before. So I don't know if you remember when Bill Weld took over in 1990, but it was the same situation, really. And of course, he's Charlie's mentor.
Right.
And he came in as a Republican in a Democrat House and Senate, and everybody worked together because everybody finally realized you had to do something to make the government work. The Democrats were embarrassed. Dukakis was so appallingly bad. The Democrats were all angry at him. Deval Patrick has a better personality than Dukakis, so they don't show the anger against him as much. But everyone says, can't somebody just take control here? Because we can't do it because we're just legislators and we're playing our little games and doing our patronage things. Now we can't do our patronage things anymore. What are we supposed to do? So and then someone comes in and says, I'm the grown-up in the room. Hi. And so I think I really do think they're going to cooperate and work with him.
Yeah. You hear a lot of positive things out of Stanley Rosenberg's office, of course, Speaker DeLeo and the other leadership members. The other thing, too, I think Charlie's done very well, is he's willing to give any good idea a fair hearing, to air the issue, to give credit where credit's due, and that's not capitulating or somehow not being, a conservative or liberal. That's just promoting a good idea, and it seems to me that's what the voters want. Is that what you heard out there?
Yeah, I think Charlie is a listener. He listens to people, and I think I got that when I was door knocking. In fact, I got a lot of people that wanted Charlie, but they didn't want Richard to say.
Right.
And I don't know why that was, but I think Charlie appealed to a broader spectrum, I guess.
Right. Interesting, because they both ran before. They both were involved in other campaigns. Of course, Charlie had to appeal to different regions of the state. Richard was on the North Shore.
But it wasn't so much they didn't want him, it's just that Jim was keeping me informed on this because he really was out there with the people and kept saying he keeps hearing the same thing, Baker, Moulton, and that's what I have been afraid of all along. But it wasn't they didn't want to say so much as this newcomer showed up with this incredible resume and people were attracted to that.
Right.
So I don't think there's anything else Richard could have done or supporters of Richard to say could have done. Once Moulton was in that race, it was pretty much all over, and we kept the fight going, and Jim worked so hard. But it was pretty much over with the primary, I think. And
yeah. Well, that wasn't the only action on the North Shore. We saw some great local candidates. Leah Cole won her re-election in Peabody.
That was amazing.
Won her full first two-year term to office in a challenging city, very diverse city. Tom Lyons ran strong in the West Peabody, Danvers area. We had apparently, as we're taping today, Jim Kelcourse has a 10-vote lead in Newburyport, of all places, and stands to pick up a seat there as well. Let's talk about the North Shore voter. This is filmed in Beverly, even though we send it out to the Commonwealth. What is unique about the North Shore voter that might be different than another part of the state, Barbara?
Jim probably knows more. He's been.
You've been here. You've lived in Beverly your whole life.
I think they're more independent.
Really?
I think they're. I mean, I think Beverly is like 11% Republican, 28% Democrat, and the rest are whatever.
Right, whatever.
Unenrolled.
The ability to ticket split, as we talked about. So we shouldn't be surprised that people went Baker Moulton.
Very independent. Think about the issues. So I don't know. Maybe that's not unique in Massachusetts, but I think that's the way the North Shore seems to be.
Right.
That's interesting, Steve. The reason I couldn't answer the question is I know the North Shore is independent because I'm an independent and we've been taken over slowly for a while, but I don't know about the rest of the congressional districts if they have so many independents also.
I think generally speaking, most of them are unenrolled, yeah. Yeah,
we don't use the word unenrolled. We are
independent.
Enrolled voters who
Right.
are independent. It's a word like freedom, like liberty, independent.
So maybe that was too technical.
Don't want commitment, maybe. I don't
Right,
know.
right. The ability to...
Okay, that's a way to look at it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Barbara, let's quickly talk about the state budget. I know there is a projected shortfall right now, I believe, of $325 million. That's
yes, and part of that is ours.
Okay.
Because when we talking about ballot questions, the last one we did was in 2000, and we rolled the income tax rate back, the temporary income tax rate of Michael Dukakis, finally getting it down to its traditional 5%. Voters overwhelmingly passed it. 2002, they froze it. And they froze it and they put it in a formula, complicated formula having to do with the economy and how much they expected revenues to be. And every time revenues exceed expectations, you get a little bit closer to that 5%. So this year, as Charlie's coming in, and of course he and his kind of people, kind of candidate, supported the income tax rollback.
Right.
This year, they're going to have a little bit of a cut for income tax payers.
Right. Well, let's hope the economy continues to expand and that revenue collection exceeds spending projections or real spending.
Well, but the rest of it is overspending.
Right.
And a lot of it on illegal immigrants and all the other things that we deplore. They're spending too much.
Of course, another priority for the new administration is to get this website up and running and that the Health Connector is functioning and working, which hasn't been the case. And you think about the lost monies there that did not go back to the taxpayer for tax relief or other programs locally.
Well, Richard Desai wanted to get a waiver from this whole federal Obamacare.
Right.
But,
you bring up an interesting point how the Democratic congressional delegation deals with the Republican Congress. It doesn't get a lot of talk up here in blue-leaning Massachusetts, but the reality is that New England will not have the clout of other parts of the country. What's your thought on that?
Well, considering sometimes the way New England has been voting, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't worry too much about that. It's the people who worry about that are the people who want to bring home your share of the bacon. And it's that bacon I consider a problem. So
overspending, automatic spending.
Yeah, I mean, they all take turns, I'll vote for your bacon, you vote for my bacon. How about we don't have bacon?
Right.
So that's not the sort of thing that worries me a whole lot, though I think just it probably would have been smart for the voters to choose at least one Republican
Right.
to go in there and talk to the Republican leadership instead of choosing all Democrats, who fortunately will be pretty much helpless and useless.
we have 2 Republican governors, though.
Right,
Yes.
that's a pickup.
And that will be a big help.
Yeah, of course, if 2016 candidates emerge that make that argument about sending us down to Washington where you could have some balance and, take the argument that Baker did very well at the state level and bring and argue it about Washington, D.C. So we'll certainly look to see what happens there. We might not have bacon, but we're going to have turkey on Thanksgiving. I hope you both have a very good Thanksgiving. We appreciate you coming on here.
Thank you.
We want to make this program accessible and available to others and promote public affairs and the center-right coalition and talking about issues and how we get more people involved, and that's one of our mission here. And you've been watching the latest edition of The Finish Line. I want to thank my guests Jim Avallon of Beverly and Barbara Anderson of Marblehead for coming in here today. Our program is directed by Michael Gendre, produced by Tim Hezzy and Clay Evans. I'm Dean Cavaretta. We wish you a very good evening.